So I'm really excited to be speaking with our guest today, Dean Kulaweera. And part of the reason why I wanted to get Dean on a conversation like this is because there are a lot of professionals out there who oftentimes will try to sugarcoat things about their industry to make things not seem as harsh as they are. But anybody who's a member of our community knows that in the business analysis world, it's not always an easy profession, even though it is a very rewarding one. Part of the reason why I really wanted to get Dean on is because he really brings that same clear-cut answer way of speaking to people and cutting out a lot of the sugarcoating that it's actually going to help people get to the results that they want to have in their careers. And so I'm really excited to have you on the show. Dean, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us.
My pleasure, Emma. My pleasure. I'm very excited to be here. Love your community and loved our last conversation. So really was really excited for this conversation. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excellent. Part of the reason why I want to speak to you, Dean, today is because we have a lot of community members that are, they struggle a lot of times with aspects of their career that are not necessarily related to business analysis, but are more related to things like employment and trying to figure out how to get into a role and understanding the job market and trying to figure out how to deal with the players involved, right? Learning how to deal with recruiters, employers, etc. And so your insight into some of the things we're going to talk about are going to be very valuable for our community members and for the community in general, for anybody looking for work or looking to improve their ability to get work. And so I reached out to some of our community members to ask, to let them have the opportunity to ask a few questions. And we did get some really good questions. Sure. And we'll get into that. But before we do, I just want to let everybody know that I'll be leaving all of Dean's contact information to all his social media and especially his LinkedIn profile in the description of this video. And I want you to make sure that you go over there and you connect with Dean, because what Dean does regularly on a regular basis on LinkedIn and through a lot of other social media channels is that he holds the weekly Tech Talk meetings along with a lot of other live sessions where he'll basically just come in and he'll give you just clear-cut, real advice about how the industry works, how the profession works. And I myself find myself tuning into a lot of those sessions. So I'll be leaving Dean's contact information below. Make sure you connect with Dean. Make sure you're showing up to a lot of those live sessions if you are in any way interested in your profession, which I'm sure everybody is. All right. So with all of that said, let's dive right in. So one of the main questions that we got from our community members, Dean, was a lot of people understandably are concerned about the job market given the pandemic and everything else that's going on. And the thing that I think most people are really worried about is the uncertainty that's in the job market right now. I don't know if you can kind of share your perspective on what the pandemic basically means for a lot of job seekers right now or professionals who may be looking for work in the future.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And it's such a common concern that I hear about, Emil. So it's a great question because every day I get job seekers reaching out to me, not just BAs, obviously, everyone in tech reaching out to me in my network, asking me about the situation and not to oversimplify things, but basically the situation, folks. And for those of you watching this, and again, not to oversimplify, but what's basically happened due to the pandemic is what you have is fewer opportunities on the marketplace and a higher level of available talent competing over fewer opportunities. So if I could sum it up into just one sentence, that would be the situation.
Yeah.
Now that being said, what a lot of people are doing, and I guess one of the major errors a lot of job seekers are doing is using the same approach that they used in their job search as when times were more prosperous. So the first thing that needs to be understood is definitely a mindset change and how you're approaching your job search and the fact that the situation is very different from what it was before. And the second part is how do you navigate the existing marketplace? Well, what do you need to do differently to adjust and adapt to how things are different? Because again, there's fewer opportunities out there, more people competing over those opportunities. And the challenge the job seeker faces is, well, how do I stand out now? Because there's increased competition. There's more people applying and competing over the same roles. And it's got into what's known as, an employer-driven market, whereby the employer is kind of in the controlling seat and in that respect of things. So those are the differences at a very high level, at least, Emal, in the marketplace.
Right.
And it's up to the job seeker to figure out. And that's what I cover in my content and what I post on LinkedIn and the various channels. How do you navigate the current market? So changes are definitely required.
And the thing that you said about mindset shift, I think is really important. I want to dive a little bit more deeply into that because, as I said, everyone in our audience, I listen to Dean religiously because Dean gives it straight. And at the end of the day, there are the types of people who really want to hear more good news, and they'll selectively just choose to listen to good news. But in your profession's way too important for you to be able to get by like that. Okay, you need to understand exactly how things work, whether the news is good or bad. What you should be doing is understanding what's happening on the ground and find ways to overcome those challenges. And so, and as part of helping you do that, oftentimes, Dean, what I hear you talking about is making sure that you understand industry trends. Yes. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to us a little bit about some of those industry trends. And I've noticed a couple of things in our BA profession that I can talk about as well, but I'd really like to kind of get your take on what you mean when you talk about making sure you understand industry trends and adapting to that and adapting your mindset and everything else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great question. So when this pandemic hit, folks, and you know, obviously all of us were affected by the after effects and the whole situation, there were certain industries that were hit really bad. Right. And then there's other industries that actually profited and really prospered as a result of it. Right. So this is what all of you need to be looking at. And a lot of people message me, they're like, Dean, are there opportunities out there? You know, where are the opportunities? Well, the first clue, folks, you got to take a look at what's going on in the marketplace, right? Yeah. A lot of people, you know, they're watching the news, they're soaking all the negativity, you know, that the media puts out. But if you're going to watch the news, look at it for the business content and the market information content you'll be receiving. So when the pandemic hit, for example, obviously in the first industry that comes to mind that was hit real bad was retail, right? Because, you know, there was this whole work from home thing, social distancing. That's like the new thing. No more handshakes and all that stuff. So the retail industry was hit really, really bad. So as a job seeker, if you were a business analyst, you're passionate about the retail industry and you were not making those pivots, you probably have been suffering in your job search. You can't, your passion for retail is not going to mean a damn thing. Excuse my language, sorry about that, but it's not okay. It's not going to mean anything if your industry is suffering, if there's no demand and it's on the decline, right? Because of the new market environment. Whereas take the platform we're on right now, Zoom. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure you've seen that chart that's been going around on the internet, Imal, in regards to how much Zoom just skyrocketed.
Yep. Their active users just shot straight up.
Yeah,
they got all over the news. And this is such an important point, I think, that people tend to neglect because a lot of times when stuff like this happens, I think a lot of people fall into a mindset of really just panic and assuming that everything is bad. And it's true that many professions out there have been affected, but as business analysts, like Dean said, our profession has not nearly been affected as much as some people might think. You know, just yesterday, I got reached out to by a recruiter. My personal sense of whether there's business analyst jobs out there or not has not changed at all. What Dean said is very, very critical for you to understand. There are certain industries that are suffering far more than other industries. So, Dean, you mentioned, for example, retail. Retail was the first one that got hit really hard. So if you're a business analyst, let's say, who works on point of sale systems for retail, you're going to have a very, very difficult time right now. Right. And part of what I think you advocate for, Dean, is that people need to pivot. Can you offer folks some basic pointers on how they can get out of that mindset? Because a lot of people are not professional job seekers. So a lot of folks who've been in their job for 10, 15 years, for example, tend not to really understand that job seeking itself is a skill set that they need to treat like it's part of their career. Just like if you would do your process mapping or you would write requirements documents, you need to start treating your job search and your ability to understand the market and the employer and recruiters like Dean himself, like a skill set, right? And so I'm wondering if you can offer people's, our members and our community some pointers on how they can start to rethink about that skill set.
Absolutely. And love what you said about mindset, Imal, because I think this is probably the greatest barrier for a lot of your viewers might be experiencing. And in my experience, you know, I feel like after this pandemic hit, there's three categories of people that I've personally come across. The first category, of course, is people that, they're like, okay, things are definitely different. I got to make some pivots. I got to make some changes, which is probably a smaller minority.
Mm-hmm.
The next group would be probably people that are simply like, they just don't want to confront the fact that things are different.
Yeah.
It's more so from kind of they're taking a denial kind of a standpoint. And then there's the third group, which is people who just want to stick their head in the ground and just pretend like nothing's different, everything's cool, everything's going to be fine, and all of that stuff. So the mindset factor, folks, that's extremely important. You need to confront the fact that things are different right now. You can't be operating under the same modus of operations that you had in your mindset and your approach as you were before, because obviously things are different. And the analogy I like to use, Imal, is if you're fishing in a pond, and you're fishing, and there's fish and it's all good and everything's good, but if the fish move to another part of the pond, you need to switch your position. You can't be fishing in the same spot.
That is such a good analogy. Yeah, absolutely.
That's right.
So and it's such a good analogy because it really builds on the analogy of, you teach a person to fish, or do you actually give somebody a fish, right? It kind of builds on this same idea that when you need to eat, you have to go where the food is, right?
Exactly.
And everybody understands that. And I think that the reason why a lot of people have such a hard time making that shift in their minds is because they don't really treat the industry and the job market as a totally separate thing. So if you've been, and I understand the mindset of somebody who's been at a job for 15 years and they felt secure in their role and now they find themselves out of work, it can be such a huge barrier to try to understand how the job market actually works.
That's right.
And for our audience members, I just want to say that people like Dean are the people that are going to help you get over that hurdle. Because like I said, if you show up to Dean's live sessions, Dean will talk to you about very specific ways of how you should handle certain interview questions. He'll talk to you about some of the things that I've seen. How should you handle your LinkedIn header, right? It's such good real estate, and so many people misuse that real estate in ways that are affecting their careers that they don't necessarily understand. And so for a lot of people that may be struggling out there, I would say definitely make sure that you're paying attention to a lot of what Dean's saying. And Dean, if I could, what I'd like to do is to maybe talk a little bit about salaries, because one of the other major questions that really pops up it came up in our community, and I think it's something that usually comes up very much in your live sessions, is people who are being asked to take less money, or not necessarily even being asked a lot of times, but they themselves are now assuming that they have to take less pay for the same work that they were doing before. Can you help us kind of understand that aspect of the job search?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, Amal. And this is a question, again, a lot of people have been asking me lately as well. Because of the current environment, should I be reducing my salary? So my response, my personal opinion on that, Amal, and first of all, I just want to say, if for those of you watching, if you want to, go in at a lower rate, it's 100% entirely your decision, right? Mm-hmm. But my viewpoint on this, Amal, is do not default to lowering your salary as your first response, right? And this is based on my experience as a sales professional. Always look for if there are any other core issues or areas of concern that are resulting in the customer, the client, the hiring manager, in defaulting to, inquiring about your salary flexibility. So, and my advice on that is, I guess a few things come to mind, right? First of all, you want to first focus on the problem, the size of the problem the client or the organization is experiencing. You want to put the focus on that. The next thing is you want to put the focus on your ability to solve that problem, right? Because, and how it works, and to simplify things, an organization has a problem that they need fixed. They invest in you. They make the investment in you to come in and solve the problem. So you need to focus on your ability to solve the problem, because that displays and demonstrates your value and the kind of ROI you can bring to the table. Mm-hmm. Next thing is you want to be well informed about your value. Now that in itself is a mistake a lot of job seekers and BAs that I've seen make, and we'll get into that later. You need to do your research, folks. You need to be well informed about your market value and your own personal value in terms of what you can do, what you can solve, what kind of problems you can solve. And as a side note, Amal, I did want to mention, like in my conversations with tech professionals and even BAs, what I found is that a lot of BAs are not aware of the scope of the projects that they've been involved with. What I mean by that is the actual dollar valuation of the projects that they've completed or that they've been involved in. And this is such a key piece of information that'll help you folks sell yourself as someone at the rate that you're asking for.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know this, if you don't know the valuation of the projects if it's $1 million project, a $5 million project, $10 million project, if you don't know those numbers, how are you going to show how you fit into that scope and your value and your ROI in that project? You need to know your numbers, folks. You have to know your numbers.
Yeah, and that such excellent input into that, Dean, because like I said, for a company who's running a project that is, let's say, $3 to $5 million, having a small team of analysts can help them save so much money on a project if they have a skill set that is going to prevent them from building the wrong solution, for example. There are so many IT projects that often fail because the analysis work is weak, or by the time they get into the development work, a lot of the analysis and the functional specifications are not clear. And there's a real cost to that because now the project extends, right? And so for analysts especially, it is so important for you to understand your position in the software development process and in the solution delivery process. Now, having said that, the way that I normally think about this, and you can help correct my thinking if it's wrong, Dean, is that typically the way that I think about negotiation or salary negotiation, if just for my own personal BA career, is in terms of who's chasing who, right? And so there are a lot of people when they first start out in their professions who have to chase work, okay?
Absolutely, yeah.
And for a group of professionals, they reach a certain point in their career where now the work is chasing them. So it's kind of like a game of tag. You're chasing work and you find work and you think that, okay, that might give you the perception that the work is the thing that it needs to be chased. What I try to teach business analysts is that there is a certain point of inflection in your career where you basically, once you reach that point of inflection, now you're just sitting back and people are coming to you and saying, hey, are you interested in working on our project? Are you willing to do that? And many people, I think, have a hard time really understanding that concept because they've been chasing work for so long that they can't really believe that can actually happen in a profession. But it's not just business analysts. I know so many good project managers. I know so many good software architects that have work beyond work requests. And it is because they've demonstrated to their previous clients or to their previous employers that they know how to deliver. And so the way I think about it normally is if you're a person who's constantly chasing work, then you're not in a good negotiating position when it comes to salary. If you're a person where you have options, where you have recruiters reaching out to you every other week and saying, hey, do you want to work on this project? You can now start to pick and choose the type of projects you want. But more importantly, you don't necessarily have to settle for a lower rate, even if they propose that. You can negotiate your way up. And much of what you said really factors into that. How much value are you adding? What is your negotiating position? And so does that, from a recruiter's point of view, does that make sense? Or is my thinking a little bit off here?
No, I mean, you made, it's such a great example, Imal, like what you said. It's always, a very, if you want to be in a powerful position, the most powerful position you can be in is, having people reach out to you and having people come to you and inquire, hey, Imal, I see you all over LinkedIn. You're always posting great stuff. I know you're well known in your space. We have such and such project going on. Would you be interested in having a further conversation about it? That's always a very powerful position to be in. And definitely for all your viewers, that's the kind of position you need to put yourself in because that gives you higher negotiating power, obviously. Now, that being said, if maybe some of you watching are not in that kind of a position, that does not mean you can't still, this is where you have to develop your negotiating skill and your negotiating ability. But the scenario that Imal said is the ideal position to be in, whereby you're so well known, you're seen as a thought leader, you're seen as an expert in your space, and you've got people coming to you. You got recruiters approaching you. You're the first person the recruiter thinks about. You're the first person, such and such company thinks about. Definitely the most powerful position to be in. I completely agree with that, Imal.
Yeah, and would you say it's fair to say that for people who are not necessarily, like I'm 15 years into my career, right?
Yeah.
You might have somebody who's 5 years in who still has some work to put in to actually get to that position in their career, which is perfectly fine. So that is the way I see it is that it's maybe a strategy for the longer run, which is something you want to strive towards. In the shorter run, I think what I'm hearing you say is that you still have some leverage. And the way that I think it translates in my mind is that I think about it is that if you have already been shortlisted, and let's say there's a group of 2 or 3 people that the employer is considering, that should already be a signal to you that your skills are what they need, right?
Yeah.
And if they are now presenting you with an option, that should automatically signal to you that, well, hold on a second. Well, if you're asking me to come and work for you, obviously you know that I can do the work because you vetted me. Now it's time for us to really talk about how much is that work really worth. Would it be fair to say that it's for people should maybe from a job seeker's point of view, just think about it in those terms, is that if you've been shortlisted and you've actually had an offer, that might be a time where you think to yourself, okay, can we negotiate on the rate a little bit? Is that a fair thing to do or not?
Yeah, I mean, it's fair, right, Amal? I mean, obviously, if you've been shortlisted, if you know that you're in the final pick of candidates, that definitely puts you in a greater position of negotiating ability, because you know that obviously you've been selected. Now, my perspective, and this is based on my experience as a recruiter, is, and something that I've seen, Amal, is the greater you're able to display your value, the less important your salary and your rate becomes to the employer. I have plenty of times, placed candidates above the budget.
Yeah.
And for more than what they asked for more than what the client was willing to pay initially, simply because they saw so much value in the candidate and their ability to solve the problem.
Right.
So that's why I stress, folks, for those of you watching, know your value, be able to communicate that value, and know your numbers. If there's one shortcoming, I see a lot of BAs and a lot of people out there, they're not well informed about the numbers in relation to their projects. Just recently, I've been speaking to BAs, and I asked them, so what was the dollar valuation of that project or this project? Well, I'm not sure. I don't know. Like, I wasn't aware of those figures.
Yeah.
If you haven't been doing that, folks, from now onwards, make a commitment to find out what those numbers are.
Right.
And also, after the project is completed, what kind of an impact did you have on the project and what were the after effects?
Yeah.
You need to know these things. That's how you're going to sell your value.
Excellent. That is excellent. If you were to, maybe just to pull things back a little bit, and like I said, you said so many important things there, and I could ask you a million follow-up questions, but I know I don't want to hold you for longer than we can here.
No.
But we'll definitely, if we get a chance, I'll definitely try to have you back on for our members.
Absolutely. I love it.
But again, the best place to catch Dean, and I've said this 3 times, I'm going to keep on saying it over and over again. You got to make sure you connect with Dean on LinkedIn. I'm going to leave you the link below. If you were, when you're dealing with business analysts or anybody in the IT recruitment space, could you talk to us a little bit about maybe the single biggest mistake that they make when throughout their job search?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll probably have to mention a few, Imal, because a few things come to mind.
Yeah.
But probably the first one would be, and this is for most IT professionals I come into contact with, and that is over dependence on their resume. A lot of people think, okay, I got an excellent resume. Maybe you invested in a resume writer. That's all I need. I'm good. Like nothing further from that point. But no, folks, your resume is pretty much it's pretty much a hook. It's almost like a marketing brochure.
Right.
You want to use that as a tool to help get attention, to get someone to want to give you a phone call, as a point of reference. That's the sole purpose of your resume. The selling part is still entirely 100% up to you as the job seeker, as the candidate, as the consultant. Right. You need to be able to articulate the value of the projects you've listed on your resume, be able to sell them on. Again, it all comes down to value and your ability to sell your value. So that's the number one mistake a lot of people make, Imal.
Yep.
It's overly dependent on the resume, thinking the resume is going to do all the selling. Even the best resume, and I say this a lot, even the best resume in the world, folks, if you get a gold medal for your resume, the only thing it's going to get you is that initial phone call.
Right.
Beyond that point, it's 100% up to you. So keep that in mind. The only thing a great resume is going to get you is a phone call.
Right.
It's not going to get you a job. Getting the job is up to you.
Yeah. So,
right?
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, I don't mean to cut in. So I just have a lot of follow-ups, but I'm going to let you go. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So I'll just finish up the major mistakes I see. And then the next mistake would be in dealing with recruiters specifically is not explaining, your accomplishments, your achievements, the projects, maybe the technical environment in an easy to understand manner. Now, in my case, Amal, I graduated with a BA in information technology. I have an understanding of IT, but not all IT recruiters out there, folks, are going to come from a technical background or have an understanding of IT. So you need to make sure, always assume that the recruiter might not have a technical understanding about what you're talking about. So make sure you're adjusting your pitch based on who you're speaking with. Right. If you're speaking to a recruiter, you don't want to get as much technical. If you are mentioning technical stuff, give them a brief run through about what exactly you're talking about.
Right.
Obviously, if it's a technical person, definitely feel free to, go crazy. You can get more technical with them to explain your projects, your achievements, your accomplishments. If it's an HR person, same thing. You might not want to get more technical. And the reason why this is important, Amal, is that, and it's human psychology 101. Most people, when they don't understand something, they don't want to admit that they don't understand something. right? If you're speaking to a recruiter, the recruiter wants. If I was a recruiter, I was calling Imal. I want Imal to feel confident in letting me represent him for a position. If I were to admit, oh, Imal, I don't understand this, I don't understand that, I'm gonna be fearful that Imal's confidence in me is gonna drop, and he's not gonna want to proceed with me on the role.
Right.
So don't expect the recruiter to admit, when they don't know something. Now,
Okay.
I obviously, that's not how I operate. I'm fine with admitting when I don't understand something,
Yeah.
but not all recruiters are going to do that. So that's why you need to explain things in an easy to understand manner. And then also the next thing I wanted to mention is the other mistake a lot of people make is being vague in your responses. When your responses are too vague, too abrupt, it comes across as you maybe not feeling confident in what the recruiter or the person's asking. It could be that you're trying to sidestep the question. So this is how it can come across in the wrong way. So don't be too vague and too abrupt. At the same time, you don't want to go into a whole, speech, like a 20-minute speech for every question that they ask.
Yeah.
Be concise, be direct, but avoid the extremes of being too vague and also going on for too long in your responses.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that would probably be the top mistakes.
That is so good. All such good advice, especially about, I think one of the things that many people struggle with is really in understanding the job market is the function that recruiters play.
That's right,
and I think a lot of people out there just assume that the recruiter has total control over who does what, and that they know, they're all knowing and that they know everything. It's not like that. So recruiters basically work with, and this is something that Dean can really teach you inside out because he does it on a daily basis. But essentially what a recruiter does is they are the people who find the right fit for what the organization is looking for. So a lot of organizations say, well, look, we need to find an analyst who knows how to do Oracle implementations, for example. That would come to somebody like Dean or a number of different recruitment companies that are out there.
Yeah.
And now Dean is looking to make sure that he can find the right fit. Doesn't have a lot of control, might not necessarily even understand the details of how Oracle functions, but Dean specifically knows enough. A lot of recruiters don't necessarily even know what Oracle means, right?
That's right.
And so you have to work with them to say, a lot of times when I speak with recruiters, I'll talk to them about projects and I'll explain things to them. I say, look, what your client's trying to do, the client meaning the employer, what they're trying to do is they're trying to implement this type of a project. I can explain this very well to you, and I can explain it to them. And so sometimes you do need to take that type of an approach, which I think is an excellent piece of advice. You're not going to get this type of advice from anybody else, right? To our community members, to a lot of other people. This is the real world type of advice that it is so hard for job seekers to find. Now, I have a million follow-up questions, but I will ask just one.
Yeah, sure.
So we had a question that came up in our community about specific skill sets. So that might be hard to quantify. So for example, the question was specifically about SQL as a skill set for business analysts. And the question is that the employer a lot of times will say, hey, can you tell us how you are with SQL? Which it can be hard to quantify in some ways.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions on how somebody could handle that type of a thing if it comes from an employer?
Yeah, and it's a great question. And I think what's important to understand regarding that is what they want to know is, how good are you with SQL within the context of a business analyst? I think that's important to establish. So in your response, you need to make sure that that's understood whoever it is you're speaking with. Again, if it's an actual hiring manager, the person you're reporting to, they might obviously have that understanding in place that they're asking it from the perspective of, okay, within a business analysis framework, what's your skill set or experience or knowledge with SQL? If it's someone who's not a direct hiring manager, you might have to clarify that. So my suggestion would be to, in your response, explain, well, within the constrictions of a business analyst role, such and such and such would be my experience. And, this is what I've done. And, this would be my level of expertise in regards to that.
Right.
So just make sure that that's known, compared to, whereas, if it's someone who doesn't understand about this space, they might think that, when you rate yourself a 10 out of 10, as a business analyst who can use SQL, that might be very different to like an SQL developer, right?
Or data architect. Yeah,
yeah,
they
exactly.
might think that you can come in and build them a whole new system using SQL, right? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I would say set the context, set the stage, and make sure they understand that.
Yeah, so the context is very important. And one of the other things that I think I would add to that answer is specifically about SQL. If somebody was to ask me, hey, can you rate yourself on SQL? what you want to do is you want to make sure that they understand your skill set from their own point of view. And so with SQL, there's so many different things SQL can do. So what you might want to do is try to operationalize the answer for them in as follows. So for example, I can say, hey, I know SQL enough to be able to help you understand what the data structures in your database look like. I know enough SQL to build you probably medium complexity reports. I cannot do very, very complex reports, okay? Meaning that if you have a complicated database structure, my limits are, up at a certain point. If you give them that type of an answer where they're thinking, okay, well, I can get this quality of a report if I pay for your skill set, then that helps them really clearly understand, okay, it's something very clear in terms that they understand. And so that I would kind of just add a little bit of that about how I would answer that question as well.
I love that.
Yeah, the context, I think the context is so important, especially, again, this goes back to the idea that many people assume automatically that the recruiter or the hiring manager a lot of times knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that what many people don't understand is that even if you have a department manager that manages a department of business analysts and developers, it's not the resource manager's job really to understand the nitty-gritty details of what happens there, right? So even if it is the hiring manager, they might not necessarily even know what it is that you have to do to get the results that they're looking for.
Exactly.
Many times when I'm interviewing for different consulting roles, a lot of times I have to explain to the actual hiring manager, look, this is the way that your department functions, and you have to understand that you need at least these 4 different skills. I have 3 of them. You're going to need somebody else who does the 4th, the part of that skill.
Yeah.
And so I try to help them understand a lot of their work. Some hiring managers are very good and they come from a very, very detailed background. Yeah. A lot of hiring managers are just resource managers. They don't necessarily even understand the details of what their department is doing. So
that's right.
That proactive approach that you talked about, Dean, and context and making sure you're speaking to them in a way where you're not necessarily forcing them to admit they don't know.
Yeah.
All very good tips. Now, the way that you explained some of the drawbacks of, or some of the places where people fall short, to me, it seems like a process, right? You have step 1 is your resume. Your resume is where you get the hook. Step number 2 is now a whole new step, right? You think you've finished the job at step 1, but you haven't done step 2.
Yeah.
And it's so important, it's so valuable to describe things to people the way that you did there, because now people have to really look at their job search process as an actual process that has very specific steps. It shouldn't be a mystery to people the way that I think it is for a lot of people. It's a set of steps. And I know that you yourself have a program right now that you're teaching people how to really understand the ins and outs of that. And I do have a couple of questions about that for you. So, but can you just generally tell me about what that program is and how it can help people understand that process?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for bringing that up. So yeah, I'm currently collaborating on a program actually with Gurpreet Kaur. So she's been running the program for about a year. This is the first time she's actually specializing it towards 100% IT professionals. Mm-hmm. So, which is why I was brought in, because of my huge network of tech professionals, and I've been speaking about these topics all the time. So we're collaborating on it, and just like you said, Imal, it's pretty much from end to end. It's all starting from creating your resume from scratch. How do you create a resume that resonates and captures the attention of IT recruiters? Mm-hmm. Everyone talks about, passing the ATS, but nobody talks about the second component, which is very important. Yeah. And that is, okay, you got through the ATS, you're showing up in the search results, but how do you make your resume compelling so someone wants to actually give you a phone call?
Right.
That's the part no one talks about. Yeah. So we covered that, like creating the resume from scratch, and again, how to make it appeal to the technical recruiters out there, mm-hmm. Through to building the relationships with agencies. How do you have those conversations? How do you get their attention? What is the role of a recruiter? Having a realistic outlook of how to actually deal with recruiters and have a realistic outlook on your relationships with them. Yeah. What questions you need to be asking recruiters? How do you qualify them? How do you determine follow-up and all those aspects? All the way through to your personal branding, which is extremely important. And you spoke about that before, Imal, in terms of how do you get that incoming attention from people? How do you establish yourself in that sense? Right. So we spend a lot of time on personal brand building and all of that aspect, all the way through to, interview preparation and tips and techniques and all that stuff, all the way through to final offer negotiation, all that stuff. So
you cover the full cycle then? The full cycle, beginning
absolutely.
to end. That is excellent. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you. If I was in an earlier part of my career, I would have signed up for this because there has been all throughout my career, I've been trying to figure out how does this industry actually work, because I really wanted to become a consultant, and job searching for me was going to be a regular thing. And I knew that, right?
Right.
And so something like this, I would have paid top dollar for something like this. And I don't mean to just advertise your program, but something like this would have helped me save so much pain and anguish. And more importantly, it would have helped me save a lot of time, because I had to learn things the hard way. I had to deal with a lot of bad recruiters until I realized, hey, there's actually really good recruiters out there who are trustworthy, who have integrity, who really serve the needs of their clients, and they serve the needs of the people that they're working with. It took me a long time to figure out that there's an entire industry out there. So for anybody who's struggling in understanding this, especially I think if you want to become a freelancer or a consultant, a program like the value that a program like this would have is, I think, is probably immeasurable from, from a career strategy perspective. So definitely check that out to everybody else. Dean, I have a million other questions, but what I'll do is I want to respect your time. Thank you very much for coming on and explaining some of these basic things that I think everybody needs to know that nobody really understands. Really appreciate you spending time with us today.
No worries. My pleasure, Amal. It was a pleasure. I really had a lot of fun. Definitely, I'd be happy to come back anytime, and hope the information is of practical use and value for all your viewers. And thanks again for inviting me.
Yeah, this has been great. And again, for everybody else listening, I'm going to leave all of Dean's contact information. Make sure you're connected. Make sure you're paying attention, especially on LinkedIn.